singer Billy Paul has died.
The people seem to enjoy me, and that's one of the things that makes me keep coming back. Because I always try to give my best and do the best of everything that I got, you know? Oh. And I'm going to give him a good show.
Horrible end. That's how it all finished for Billy Paul. But what if we told you that before the funeral, before the illness, Billy Paul was in a courtroom fighting for the money he earned from his biggest hit? Billy Paul was more than just a voice. He was a Grammy winner, the man behind Me and Mrs. Jones, and a musical pioneer who helped build the legendary Philadelphia sound. His 1972 single sold 2 million copies and topped both the R&B and pop charts. He was a star, but behind that success was a battle that lasted 3 decades. When Kenneth Gamble and Leon Huff launched Philadelphia International Records in 1971, Billy Paul wasn't just another artist, he was the foundation. At 37 years old, Paul was already a veteran of the Philadelphia music scene with a career dating back to 1952. His album Going East was the very first album released on the new label. Gamble and Huff knew him as a skilled interpreter of jazz and pop standards. His vocal style was different from other soul singers. He had a high register phrasing influenced by female jazz vocalists like Nina Simone and Carmen McRae, and even by John Coltrane's horn-like style. Paul was never meant to be a pop star. He was positioned as the steady album producer who would attract and maintain a mature black audience. He was the very foundation of the label, bridging jazz traditions with the growing soul sound. This gave the label artistic credibility, but it also created tension. Paul was an art asset, not a pop one, and that distinction would be shattered by his sudden, massive success. In 1972, Paul's album 360 Degrees of Billy Paul gave the world Me and Mrs. Jones. The song was a cultural phenomenon about infidelity that made Paul Soul's most famous cheater. It earned him a Grammy Award and made him a household name. But then the label made a decision that destroyed his momentum. Instead of building on the mainstream pop audience, Gamble and Huff selected the politically charged, funk-driven Am I Black Enough for You as the follow-up single. This track was a defiant celebration of black pride and resolve, and it was a complete departure in tone and style. Radio stations resisted this more socially conscious song, and it famously stalled at number 73 on the pop charts. This move killed Paul's pop career. Critics later noted that Gamble and Huff did a horrible job picking Paul's singles. Some better choices in his career might have been Hall of Fame material. This wasn't just a commercial mistake, it was a profound miscalculation. Gamble and Huff, as creators of socially conscious music, appear to have used Paul's newfound fame as a vehicle for their own social message, destroying the pop career they had accidentally created. For Paul, this was the first betrayal. He became a victim of poor song selection and virtually disappeared from the charts. This incident formed the crucial backdrop for the 30-year financial battle that followed. Any future money problems would be viewed not as simple accounting errors, but as part of a continuous pattern of disrespect and mismanagement that began in 1973. The long, draining fight reached its peak in 2003 with a federal lawsuit in Los Angeles. The case was Billy Paul versus Assorted Music. The defendants included Gamble and Huff's publishing company, Assorted Music Inc., Kenneth Gamble, Leon Huff, and Sony Music. The central claim was for unpaid royalties from Me and Mrs. Jones. The lawsuit wasn't for royalties lost in the 1970s, which would have likely been dismissed. Instead, the claim targeted the specific period of 1994 to 2002. This time frame suggests the lawsuit was triggered by problems discovered during the CD reissue and digital sampling era. It showed an allegation of ongoing financial suppression, not an old complaint. Paul's legal team said he had not received a single accounting statement in 27 years. Paul's wife and manager, Blanche Williams, gave the sharpest summary of the allegations. She stated the jury was angry at the arrogance of Gamble and Huff, the creative bookkeeping done by Sony, and their discovery of how blatantly and systematically Sony and Philadelphia International Records underreported Billy's earnings. The defense, led by attorney Joseph Porter, tried to minimize the dispute, stating it was nothing but an accounting issue. No one said you cheated me, but this public statement hid an aggressive and risky legal strategy. The defense made two arguments. First, they admitted a minor error, claiming Paul was owed only about $27,000 for mistakenly uncollected foreign royalty. Second, they filed a stunning counterclaim that Billy Paul actually owed the company $314,000. This $314,000 figure was based on the industry practice of recoupment. Gamble and Huff argued that the production and recording costs for all 10 albums Paul made for Philadelphia International Records from 1971 to 1980 were advances against his royalty, and these costs had still not been paid back. This was a deeply risky legal gamble. Gambler and Huff were effectively arguing that the massive profits from Me and Mrs. Jones were being used to pay for the other 9 albums that they had failed to market properly, including the Am I Black Enough for You disaster. The jury, which deliberated for less than an hour, clearly viewed this argument as punitive. The arrogance Blanche Williams cited was almost certainly the jury's reaction to this specific $314,000 counterclaim. On April 24, 2003, the Los Angeles jury delivered a stunning victory for Billy Paul. They awarded him $500,000 in unpaid royalties, which was $12,000 more than his legal team had requested. The jury explicitly found that Paul owed the company nothing. The legal key to the case was the testimony of expert witness Seymour Strauss. Strauss testified clearly that there is no question that Billy Paul's royalties had been improperly calculated for many years. More importantly, Strauss's testimony established a landmark legal precedent. He argued that the case firmly establishes the rights of singers signed to small production companies to receive 50% of the money earned by the major labels that distribute the records. This was a direct attack on the industry's unclear accounting structure. In the standard model, the major label Sony paid the production company Philadelphia International Records, and then the production company paid the artist, often after applying creative bookkeeping and excessive fees. Strauss's argument, which the jury accepted, entitled Paul to 50% of the gross revenue from the distributor Sony before Gambler and Huff applied their own costs. This ruling blew a legal hole in the entire Philadelphia International Records business model. Following the verdict, Gamble and Huff and Sony were expected to appeal the decision, though available records do not confirm the outcome of such an appeal. Billy Paul's 2003 victory was not an isolated incident. It was the catalyst that exposed a pattern of similar financial disputes at Philadelphia International Records, just as his wife predicted. Blanche Williams' immediate reaction to the verdict was prophetic. Winning this case opens the door for all of those other artists whose royalties were withheld or underaccounted to go to court and seek justice. This is just the beginning of Gamble and Huff's worst nightmare. The avalanche cometh. Her words proved true. The case was immediately cited as an important precedent. The OJs were among the artists who benefited from the precedent set by Billy Paul's lawsuit. Soon after, Archie Bell of Archie Bell and the Drells also sued Gamble and Huff for unpaid royalty. The OJ's lawsuits reveal an even deeper and longer history of financial conflict with Gamble and Huff. 1 year after Paul's verdict, OJ's members Eddie Levert and Walter Williams sued Gamble and Huff, Philadelphia International Records, and Assorted Music for $3 million. Their claim alleged that the defendants had breached a settlement agreement from a previous dispute and continued to cheat them on royalty. The suit specifically alleged that Gamble and Huff had wrongfully held over $47,000, which they stated they kept to pay their legal bill in another matter. This shows a long-standing, bitter relationship that existed before Paul's 2003 case. In 2007, former OJ's member Sammy Strain filed his own lawsuit, naming his bandmates and Gamble and Huff and Philadelphia International Records as defendants. Strain's allegation was staggering. He claimed he never received any royalties from his 16 years with the group from 1976 to 1992, a period during which he recorded 11 albums, including multiple gold and platinum records. The case of Archie Bell in 2011 provides the most important point of comparison. Archie Bell sued Gamble and Huff and Philadelphia International Records for breach of contract, unpaid royalties, and fraud, alleging the label was diverting monies and had failed to provide adequate, complete, or accurate accounting. Having lost to Paul 8 years earlier, Gamble and Huff's legal team used a more refined defense. They argued Bell's claims were time-barred due to the statute of limitations. They used the exact same recoupment defense as in the Paul case, claiming advances and production costs exceed receipts, so no royalties are owed. The outcome, however, was completely different. The court granted summary judgment for the defendants defendants. The court agreed that Bell's claims were partially time-barred. More importantly, on the merits of the case, the court ruled that Bell produced no evidence rebutting defendants' recoupment accounting. The contrast between the Paul and Bell cases is revealing. Billy Paul won because his legal team and expert witness, Seymour Strauss, successfully audited and deconstructed Gamble and Huff's creative bookkeeping. Archie Bell lost because his team, facing the same recoupment defense, could not. This showed the immense legal and financial burden required to defeat a label's unclear accounting, highlighting the importance of Paul's victory. The central legacy of Billy Paul's relationship with Gamble and Huff is one of deep contradiction. It captures the intense conflict between artistic creation and financial exploitation that defined 20th century soul music. Powerful contradiction exists in the public record. Billy Paul was the man who sued Gamble and Huff, and whose wife publicly condemned their arrogance and creative bookkeeping. Yet Paul himself held a deeply nostalgic view of that same era. In multiple interviews, Paul stated that despite the many difficult moments with Gamble and Huff, he would look back on those years as a lost golden age. He described the Philadelphia International Record Studio environment in glowing terms. It was like a family full of music. It was like music round the clock, and I reminisce, and I still wish those days were here. This is not a contradiction, but rather a clear separation of the art from the administration. Paul's nostalgia was for the studio, the sound, the collaboration with the house band MFSB, and the family of artists. His lawsuit was against the ledger. This conflict was widespread in the industry, where it wasn't just white record label owners taking advantage of black musicians. Black record label owners took advantage of black musicians too. The Philadelphia International Record story, like Motown's, is one of a leading black-owned entertainment enterprise that simultaneously created genius and, as alleged in court, exploited its creators. Billy Paul died on April 24, 2016, from pancreatic cancer at age 81 in his New Jersey home. He passed away 13 years after his legal victory. The $500,000 verdict was, as Blanche Williams called it, a moral victory. It was a financial necessity, but its true value was legal and psychological. The award covered only a recent 8-year period, meaning the full amount owed since 1972 was much higher. The lawsuit was ultimately about recognition, challenging the arrogance of a system that would take a friend's greatest achievement and 30 years later claim he owed them money for it. The pain of this personal and professional betrayal was best captured by Paul's own lawyer, Stephen Ames Brown, who remarked after the verdict, and Billy Paul was Kenny Gamble's best friend. Can you imagine what might have happened to the others? As the lawsuits from the OJs and Archie Bell prove, what happened to the others was a continuation of the same long, draining fight. The verdict sent shockwaves through the music industry. For decades, artists had been told their production costs justified withheld royalty. They were told that advances needed to be recouped. They were told that creative bookkeeping was just business. Billy Paul proved otherwise. He showed that artists could win. He showed that even the most respected labels could be held accountable. His case became a blueprint for others seeking justice. Blanche Williams understood the bigger picture. This wasn't just about money for their family. It was about changing an entire system that had exploited countless artists. The moral victory she spoke of was about dignity and respect for all the musicians who built the Philly sound, but never saw fair compensation. His death was sad, but what he fought for will outlive him.